Car crashes happen every day. Most fade into statistics, but some leave behind questions that refuse to go away. In this video, we're covering 5 car crash deaths from 2025 that you won't forget. These aren't just accidents. They're cases that expose something darker about the roads we drive on. Real events, real victims, and details that will stay with you long after this video ends. It was February 9th, 2025 in Flagler County, Florida, Super Bowl weekend. Daniel Waterman, a 22-year-old from Liverpool, New York, was riding in a car with his 24-year-old girlfriend, Leah Mumby. Life was changing for him. He had just learned that Leah was expecting his child, a baby girl. Daniel was thrilled to become a father. He dreamed of raising his daughter back home in New York. But that night, a celebration turned into something no one could have imagined. The night began with an argument. Daniel later told investigators it started after 2 things happened. Leah had just found out about her pregnancy, and Daniel received a text from a female friend in New York. His mother, Heather Waterman, said the message was harmless, just friendly Super Bowl banter between a Kansas City Chiefs fan and a Philadelphia Eagles supporter. But Leah didn't see it that way. The argument grew worse as they drove along Interstate 95. Daniel said he could tell something was wrong. Her tone, her words, it all felt tense and dangerous. Then things escalated. Leah began driving recklessly, speeding down the highway. Daniel became frightened and tried to get out when she slowed down, but he couldn't. That's when, according to Daniel, she looked at him and said, "I don't care what happens, you'll get what you deserve." Then she hit the gas. The car surged past 90 miles per hour and crashed straight into a tree. The impact was devastating. Both were severely hurt. Daniel suffered broken bones, a spinal injury, collapsed lungs, and trauma to his head and face. Paramedics rushed them to the hospital. Leah survived, along with the baby she was carrying. Daniel's condition, however, was critical. He soon fell into a coma. His family rushed from New York to Florida, clinging to hope. For months, Daniel lay unconscious while doctors did everything they could. Then, slowly, he began to wake up. He couldn't talk, but he was aware, and he remembered everything. 3 months after the crash, investigators met with him. Since he still couldn't speak, Daniel wrote on a whiteboard. He described the fight, the text message, and how Leah drove faster before crashing. His account painted a clear picture. This wasn't an accident. Investigators studied the scene. There were no skid marks, no signs of braking. The car had accelerated before impact. Based on Daniel's statement and the evidence, Leah was arrested in July and charged with reckless driving causing serious bodily injury and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The car itself. She pleaded not guilty. Daniel was moved to a hospital in Syracuse, New York as he slowly recovered, but his injuries were too severe. After 8 long months, on October 8, 2025, Daniel passed away from complications linked to the crash. He had never stopped fighting, always saying he wanted to go home and meet his daughter. After his death, the charges against Leah were upgraded to vehicular homicide. She was later released on a $150,000 bond. By then, she had given birth to the baby girl Daniel never got to hold. Daniel's family is now seeking custody of the child, pending DNA confirmation. His grandfather, Michael Gilman, said, "If that child is his, we'll raise her to know who her father was." The family fears for the baby's safety, believing Leah's actions put both her and Daniel at risk that night. A fundraiser described Daniel as a soon-to-be father who wanted nothing more than to come home. It raised over $22,000. Daniel Waterman's life ended far too soon. His story is one of love, hope, and heartbreak. A man who fought for months to live for his daughter, but never got the chance to meet her. It was July 5, 2025 in Tver Oblast, Russia. 30-year-old model and former beauty queen Ksenia Alexandrova was in the passenger seat of a Porsche Panamera with her husband Ilya driving. They were heading home from Rzhev, a city about 3 hours west of Moscow. It was supposed to be a quiet trip home. But within seconds, everything changed. Born on November 12, 1994 in Moscow, Ksenia began modeling at 19 with the Modus Vivendis agency. But she was more than a model. She was educated and driven. In 2016, she graduated from Plekhanov Russian University of Economics with a degree in finance and credit. 4 years later, she completed studies at Ostankino's High School of Cinema and Television. By 2022, she had also earned a psychology degree from Moscow Pedagogical State University. In her late 20s, Ksenia became a practicing psychologist and psychodrama therapist, helping others with empathy and care. But in 2017, she rose to national fame when she represented Moscow at the Miss Russia pageant, placing as first runner-up. That same year, she represented her country at Miss Universe in Las Vegas. Although she didn't reach the semifinals, the experience put her on the global stage. Those who knew her described her as kind, talented, and full of energy. Her agency later called her a symbol of inner strength and beauty. On March 22, 2025, 4 months before the accident, Ksenia married Ilya. Their wedding photos showed a woman deeply in love and excited about the future. That July evening, as the couple drove home, the road was calm, until an elk suddenly ran onto it. Ilya had no time to react. From the moment it jumped out to the impact, a split second passed, he told Rossiyskaya Gazeta. The elk crashed through the windshield, its legs breaking the glass and striking Ksenia's head. Because the collision didn't trigger the front sensors, the airbags never deployed. Ilya looked over and saw the woman he loved gravely injured. The impact shattered the front of Ksenia's skull. Blood covered the inside of the car. Other drivers stopped to help, and within 15 minutes, emergency services arrived. Ksenia was rushed to Moscow's Sklifosovsky Institute for Emergency Medicine, one of the country's best trauma centers. Doctors placed her in intensive care, but she had already slipped into a deep coma. Over the next few weeks, Ilya stayed by her side. She briefly regained consciousness but couldn't speak and was placed on life support. Soon after, her condition worsened. Doctors found that she had developed meningitis, which spread and caused further inflammation in her brain. The infection then entered her bloodstream, leading to blood sepsis. The medical team fought to keep her alive. Her heart stopped once, but they managed to restart it. The next day, however, her heart stopped again, and this time, they couldn't bring her back. On August 12, 2025, just 5 weeks after the crash, Ksenia Alexandrova passed away. She was only 30 years old and had been married for 4 months. Her agency confirmed the news the next day, calling her a symbol of beauty, kindness, and strength. The modeling world and her fans were shocked. Ksenia's death wasn't the result of recklessness or error. It was a random accident caused by an elk crossing the road at the worst possible moment. Ilya's pain is unimaginable. He watched his wife's life end beside him and could do nothing to save her. Ksenia's story is a heartbreaking example of how quickly everything can change. In 30 years, she achieved success, education, love, and kindness that touched countless people. On that day in August, the world lost someone special, but her warmth and compassion will always be remembered. It was March 7, 2025, in Lakewood, New Jersey. Edwin Borgia, a 66-year-old former Olympic swimmer, was driving his Mazda CX-5 along Route 70 before sunrise. It was around 5:50 a.m., and the streets were mostly quiet. He was likely heading to work or running a morning errand, unaware that his life was about to end in a violent crash. Edwin's story went far beyond that morning. Born in the Philippines on July 6, 1958, he had represented his country at the 1972 Munich Olympics when he was only 14 years old. He competed in the men's 500-meter freestyle and the 4x200-meter relay. 2 years later, he earned 2 bronze medals at the 1974 Asian Games. Then in 1976, he broke the Asian record in the 500-meter freestyle at the Philippine Amateur Championships and returned to the Olympics in Montreal, competing in 4 events. Edwin moved to the United States in 1971 and later graduated from La Salle University in Pennsylvania. His brother Edgar was also an Olympian, and both swam for La Salle. Edwin eventually built a career as a controller for Dana Companies, a transport firm handling hazardous materials. He lived in several cities before settling in Manchester, New Jersey, 4 years before the crash. Though his wife Marietta had passed away in 2019, Edwin's life remained full. He had 2 children, Jacqueline and Brian, both married, and 4 grandchildren, Jacob, Marietta, Penelope, and Roman. He sang in the choir at St. Andrew Catholic Church and enjoyed bowling and playing mahjong with close friends. That morning, as he drove eastbound on Route 70 near Airport Road, a Cadillac CT5V Blackwing appeared, traveling the wrong way. The car was moving westbound in the eastbound lanes at extreme speed, later confirmed to be 103 miles per hour. Behind the wheel was 47-year-old Brian Baldari, a pharmaceutical executive from Brick Township. Baldari's background was impressive. He held a doctorate in pharmacy from Rutgers University and had over 20 years in the pharmaceutical field, working for major companies like Allergan and Novartis. At the time, he was a vice president at Azurity Pharmaceuticals. But that morning, something went terribly wrong. Investigators found that Baldari had driven the wrong way for more than 2 miles at over 100 miles per hour. before colliding head-on with Edwin's Mazda. The force of impact was catastrophic. The Cadillac then struck 6 more vehicles, leaving 8 cars damaged across the highway. Moments later, Baldari's car caught fire. Emergency responders arrived to find the Cadillac engulfed in flames. Baldari was pulled from the wreck with severe burn injuries and airlifted to Jersey Shore University Medical Center, then transferred to Weill Cornell Burn Center in New York City. Edwin was also flown to Jersey Shore, suffering massive trauma. For 11 days, Edwin fought for his life while surrounded by family. But on March 18, 2025, he passed away. A third driver was injured but survived, and the other motorist escaped with minor injuries. After a months-long investigation, authorities concluded that Baldari had been driving at twice the speed limit in the wrong direction. On August 13, 2025, he was charged with aggravated manslaughter, vehicular homicide, and assault by auto. He faced up to 50 years in prison and surrendered to police that same day. For Edwin's loved ones, justice could never replace what was lost. His obituary honored him as a proud Olympian, a loving father and grandfather, and a kind man whose life was cut short by someone else's reckless decision. Edwin Borja left home that morning expecting an ordinary day. Instead, a former Olympian who once swam among the world's best became the victim of a tragedy that should never have happened. It was September 8, 2025, in Atlacomulco, Mexico, about 80 miles northwest of Mexico City. Morning light had just started to rise over the industrial area. Workers were heading to warehouses and factories, while a double-decker bus operated by Herradura de Plata carried dozens of commuters toward Mexico City. The youngest passenger was 19 years old, the oldest 48. None of them knew that within minutes their normal Monday ride would become one of Mexico's worst transportation disasters of 2025. Around 6:30 in the morning, the bus was just 9 miles into its route, moving slowly through the industrial zone between Atlacomulco and Maravadio. Traffic was tight, cars bumper to bumper, crawling toward a railroad crossing with no signals or safety gates. Nothing warned drivers when a train was coming. Security footage later revealed the danger building. Cars were crossing the tracks one after another. A motorcyclist barely cleared them before a freight train appeared. The bus, stuck in traffic, ended up trapped on the tracks. The driver had 2 choices: wait until the cars ahead cleared, or try to cross before the train arrived. He saw the train approaching but believed he could make it. He went for it. The oncoming train belonged to Canadian Pacific Kansas City to Mexico, or CPKC, hauling automobiles north. These trains are huge and nearly impossible to stop quickly. The engineer saw the bus, but couldn't slow down in time. Seconds later, the train slammed into the bus's side. The collision ripped the double-decker in half. The front was shoved down the tracks while the back was thrown aside. The roof tore off like paper. The sound of metal twisting and passengers screaming filled the air. When the dust settled, the bus lay in 2 pieces: mangled steel, shattered windows, and chaos everywhere. Nearby residents rushed out. Some passengers crawled from the wreckage. Others cried for help. Drivers from nearby vehicles were the first to respond, helping survivors climb from the upper deck while the train finally stopped. One woman, Rebecca Miranda, waited for word on her sister and her sister's daughter-in-law, both domestic workers on that bus. She arrived at the scene as rescuers pulled victims out. Her sister survived but was hospitalized. Her daughter-in-law was among the 10 people who lost their lives. In total, 10 people, 7 women and 3 men, died that morning. 61 others were injured, many severely. First responders rushed victims to nearby hospitals as authorities secured the area. The state of Mexico's Attorney General's office confirmed the death toll and began investigating. But the driver had vanished. He fled right after the crash. CPKC released a statement expressing condolences and promised to cooperate with investigators. Herradura de Plata, the bus company, said it regretted the tragedy and offered support to victims' families. But public anger grew. Why were there no signals? Why did the driver take such a risk? Data showed that train collisions in Mexico had risen sharply, from 600 in 2020 to 800 by 2025. Just a month earlier, 6 people had died in another train crash in Guanajuato. Days later, police found and arrested the driver, who now faces serious legal charges for the deaths caused by his actions. Authorities and experts pointed to poor infrastructure, missing safety systems, and risky driving habits as ongoing problems. Many rail crossings in industrial areas lack warning gates, and bus drivers often face pressure to stay on schedule. For the 10 victims, those reasons don't matter. They were ordinary people simply heading to work. In seconds, their lives ended because of one decision: to try to beat a train. 10 lives lost, 61 injured, A community left broken, and all because safety took a backseat to speed. It was August 7th, 2025, in the remote mountains near Trout Lake, British Columbia. Stacy Turout and Matthew Yeomans were out doing what they loved most, driving through rugged terrain, testing their Toyota trucks, and filming it all for their YouTube channel, Toyota World Runners. The engaged couple had over 200,000 subscribers who followed their off-road adventures across North and South America. They were known for their skills, creativity, and love for the outdoors. But on this day, something went terribly wrong deep in the mountains. Stacy and Matthew weren't just content creators. They were true explorers. They gained fame after building what they called the world's first Land Cruiser Chinook in 100 days. It combined a Toyota Chinook camper with a Land Cruiser frame, creating a powerful off-road camper. Their videos showed not only their builds, but also their lifestyle, traveling through harsh landscapes, camping under the stars, and living their dream together. On Instagram, their 72,000 followers watched as they shared moments from their travels and relationship. They got engaged in April 2024 during a road trip through South America. Matthew proposed by drawing a ring on Stacy's finger with a marker after realizing he'd left the actual ring back home. It was spontaneous and perfectly captured who they were. Free-spirited, adventurous, and deeply connected. Just a week before the tragedy, they posted from Vancouver Island. Their last video, uploaded on July 31st, showed them smiling, laughing, and driving through rocky trails surrounded by stunning scenery. No one watching could have guessed it would be their final upload. On August 7th, around 7:30 in the evening, the couple was driving along a rough forestry road heading toward Trout Lake. The area was rugged, terrain they had conquered many times before. They knew the risks but trusted their experience and their vehicles. Then something went wrong. Authorities believed their truck lost control on the uneven ground and veered off a section of road with no trees on the side. In most parts of that trail, trees would have stopped the fall, but here there was nothing to break the drop. The vehicle plunged about 200 meters, roughly 650 feet, down a steep boulder field, rolling repeatedly before coming to rest. Matthew was thrown from the vehicle and did not survive the fall. Stacy survived the rollover but suffered a severe head injury and was still conscious when rescuers reached her. Rescue teams, guided by the exact coordinates, faced a challenging climb down the rocky slope. 2 ground teams and a helicopter worked together to reach them. Stacy was airlifted to a nearby hospital, but despite efforts to save her, she passed away later that night. 4 days later, Stacy's mother confirmed the heartbreaking news online, writing that both had passed from injuries in the mountains they loved so much. Messages of grief poured in from fans and friends. Fellow YouTuber Sean from The Story Till Now said he had spoken with Matthew just a day before the accident. Others, like 4X Journal NZ, shared how Matthew and Stacy had touched their lives with their laughter and kindness. Viewers turned the comments of their last video into a memorial, sharing how the couple had inspired them. One follower, recovering from a serious motorcycle crash, said watching their adventures helped him heal during months in the hospital. Even experienced explorers like Stacy and Matthew knew the risks of off-roading in remote places. They weren't careless, they were skilled, cautious, and deeply passionate. But sometimes even the most experienced can't predict what nature will do. Their story spread worldwide, touching people who had never heard of Toyota World Runners. Their channel remains online today, a lasting memory of their love, courage, and the life they built together. They passed away doing what they loved most, side by side, in the mountains they called home.